Hi everyone, it's Evan from the Trade Risk on Wednesday, June 3rd here with a market recap video. We're going to look at some major indices, we're going to look at the leading stocks and sectors, and then we're going to get into some individual trade ideas and some names later in the video. So we'll kick it off with the SPY, and you can see we basically closed exactly where we opened today. It was 27 basis points higher that we closed in the SPY today, and there's a lot of movement both up and down, but it all amounted to basically nothing, just a lot of spinning the tires. And this is kind of speaks to the range that we're in and this general area that we find ourselves in the market. Now if you look back last week, we had this what effectively became a false breakout here where we broke above major 212 resistance. We hung out for about 4 or 5 trading days, and then we broke back below it, and since then we've just been moving sideways. We've been moving sideways between, call it 210.50 and 212.50, and the longer we stay in here, the more significant this the resolve of this move becomes, because if we do find ourselves breaking out to the upside and definitively punching through 212.50, this line right here, then that signals that, okay, we are back into the same kind of song and dance, challenging new highs, making new highs, so on and so forth. But if we do break down from this level, then we do have sort of an interesting false breakout move that could sort of get confirmed, and you know, with those false moves, you know, we can get those quick moves back to in the opposite direction. So we need to be very cautious here, and you know, looking at the internals like I've talked about, they aren't very supportive, and again, I don't want to give them too much importance, because again, price kind of rules all, and we've seen these divergences in the past and they've kind of worked themselves out. But we do see these internals, the market support in this rally is sort of narrowing, you know, a little bit on this past couple of months, past couple of weeks action. So we want to be aware of that, and we want to use that to kind of overlay in context with price action. So for me, I'm very defensive here. I'm the lightest exposed that I've been in a very long time, and I'm just sort of waiting to see what happens here. Again, the mixed signals just has it, you know, very uneasy, and I just want to see which way this resolves. I am not long still, but you know, a very limited amount of exposure there. So I'm basically watching the highs from today and the lows from yesterday down around 210. That's the range I'm watching, and that's what I'm keying off of. Now, this is all in the SPY. If you look at the IWM, for example, today, this was a much more bullish scenario here. We did break above the past 2 weeks highs above 125, and that is a bullish, some bullish action today, closing up exactly 1%. Now, not quite at all-time highs just yet. We got those above, you know, 126.30 or so, but it looks like if this can continue, we would be challenging those later this week, perhaps. So the IWM painting a much prettier picture here for the bulls, and the only thing I would also comment on is the IWM has been most of the time it's been the leader this year, and most notably the first couple of months, first 6 weeks or so, the IWM was really leading us, and then it kind of stalled out, and you know, perhaps was a little bit sluggish. So you know, we could be seeing sort of the IWM return to its leader role and see if it can be the first index to perhaps break out to new all-time highs, which would again perhaps give you some more confidence that the SPY may resolve in that same direction. So the IWM looks good. We got this resistance overhead. That's definitely constructive though for today's action. And the Qs, you know, couldn't really get going today, couldn't get that breakout, but it is, you know, just sort of pent up here at these recent highs. So 111 is what the Qs need to get above to get that breakout in that respective market. Now let's look at some other individual indices. TLT, this one really just giving it up today below this this mattress of resistance here, of support here, where we found support back just a couple of weeks ago on the 18th. You know, we had this little bit of a bounce, but you could see, I mean, really 25% is about the most it could retrace. If you're looking at this leg here from 130 down to 118, and then you just got a really kind of meager bounce up to 123 before you violently rolled over. It looks like, you know, this trend, this downtrend that we've been in now since, I mean, you call it February, is still very much intact, and there is still some pent-up sellers in TLT. So this one is sort of worrisome. It looks, especially with the action today, that there's more downside to be had. So TLT, that one looks to be in trouble. I wouldn't want to be on the other side of that right now. USO cooling off a little bit, down 2.25%, 2.3%, and it's back, you know, basically into this $20 level. I suspect it's still just kind of trying to figure out what it wants to do. It had a great move since March up to these highs. Let's see which way it wants to resolve there. UNG, same thing, down about 2.25% today, and this move, again, we had spoken about it last week. We had a very methodical up move from, you know, from April 27th all the way to, what was the date here, to the May 19th. So in less than a month, we made this very grinding, methodical move higher, and then in about half the time we gave it right back, and now we're back basically to these lows here. So UNG back to the bottom end of this range. Let's see if it can find support here again where it did late April, and you know, it could be worth sort of a trade back, mean reversion trade, or a longer term you know, buy on the lower end of the range there. Could be interesting. Gold struggling a little bit, found its footing a bit today, but it too is back to the lower end of this range, 113 or so, 110 effectively the lows here from mid-March. So you know, if it gets below this 113, those levels do come in watch again. But gold still kind of a mess. It's at the lower end here. Let's see if they find support for gold. Silver, same type of deal here, down. All these commodities got hit pretty good today. This one still in a messy range, really, not too much to say about it. 1590, sort of a midpoint of control, and it's testing that, dancing around it right now. The semiconductors, SMH, this, you know, you could see these were the clear leaders here. They broke out, huge expansion bar, moved higher, and then you know, they kind of really stalled out here the past 3 days, and they're coming down. I mean, still healthy as all. Still very healthy, above all the fast moving averages, coming into the 20 EMA right now, right above, right under $58. So we'll have to see how this retest goes of this breakout. But semis giving it up a little bit more today, so we'll have to see if they can stabilize. They were a key component here, with a lot of M&A and just a lot of crazy action that we saw, especially on this day right here. So to be, you know, expected that we would consolidate a little bit, but we don't want to see the whole move get evaporated really quick. So semis, sort of interesting there to see if they can hold on to their leadership status. XLY was really what did well today, and also financials really perking up. You know, XLF, this one coming out of this recent flag here above 24.75, which is pretty major resistance really in the past. So you know, this one looks good. The banks do look good, and a lot of names are moving today, particularly Bank of America, JP Morgan. They were all participating pretty nicely. Goldman Sachs, Citigroup. So XLF looks pretty good. And then for the downside, all of the rate-sensitive sectors, the IYR, this one was getting crushed. The utilities getting crushed too as well. So that's kind of where you have your leadership and your laggards with today's session. Let's get into some individual names here. Apple, still hanging out, still consolidating, still just kind of churning around in this area here. It's not interesting to me at all. Below 129, 70 or so. You know, I think you'd get a lot of momentum out of Apple here, with some people pent up trying to buy this upper end consolidation up here. So you got to be careful as it kind of grinds on support. But until it really resolves 129 to 133, somewhere outside of that range, it's just not that interesting to me. It's kind of cooled off a little bit. So we'll have to see what happens with it. Google, This one's been trying to get going here. A lot of green-bodied candles here recently over the past week or so. You know, 556 or so. This level has been a pretty interesting point of control. So let's see if we can get back above that. Could be worth a pop back up to the 580s or so. So keep that one on watch. Netflix, again, this one's cooling off too. Moving average 8 EMA here, starting to flatten out a little bit. Price is curling over it. So we'll have to see if this thing's going to roll over, if it's just going to base out, go sideways. It definitely has had a monster run and is due for some consolidation, and that would be extremely healthy because I for one would want to try and get onto this name if I could. Despite having a huge move, I'd still like to see it base out, see if it can provide some opportunity. So Netflix needs a little more time, but I'm starting to watch that one there. Amazon, the next one, I am actually involved in this one. I got into it today. I like the breakout above here. The close was so-so. Isn't quite super urgent, must get in type of action with that close, but nonetheless, it is still the highest close since the earnings, second day of earnings basically. So it's had over a month to consolidate, and we'll have to see if this one can continue, if it can try and head back up to these 445, 450 level and challenge these immediate highs following their earnings release. So Amazon, small position for me, just kind of feeling out some high-level momentum there. Facebook had a really nice session today, up 2.5%. So this one busted through this $81 level of significance that I've been waiting for. Look at a weekly chart here. You can start to see, again, still pretty sideways, grinding higher, barely action. So Facebook, I don't necessarily know that it's off to the races here, but still, it definitely puts the favor to the bulls here, and I would look for some more follow through. $84 is a level that was pretty interesting back around April, so we'll have to see if it can get back above there, challenge those challenge the supply waiting around $84. So Facebook looks to be in motion, and Twitter sort of the same thing. So both these social spaces catching a bid today. This one, of course, was slaughtered off of earnings. It's been trying to stop the waterfall lower, and it's been basically slightly grinding sideways here, but it had a nice pop today. This one looks good. We'll have to see if it can get continuation. It hasn't been able to sustain 2 days really of continuation. I mean, you did loosely here. Here was basically nothing. So we'll have to see if Twitter can get going here, take out today's highs. That would be weekly highs, I believe, as well, and then Twitter could start to maybe put in a trade back to the mid 38s or so. Would be a pretty important move for the bulls there. Alibaba, this one starting to stabilize as well. Had a nice little 5-day pullback off of this nice impulse leg higher. So this one looks good. Moving, it's basically found support with some of these fast moving averages. Let's see if this one can start to continue, break back above 91.50. Remember 91.50 going back to February over here. That was a pretty interesting level, so let's see if we can get back above there, and it's a little bit lighter of supply to work through if it can. So Alibaba, that one looks interesting actually. I'm going to keep that one very closely on my radar to see if it does. I'd like to get back involved in that. GoPro, this one has continued to just push higher in this I don't know, very difficult perhaps trend to get involved in. It's been riding above the fast moving average, and it's had a lot of indecisive topping tails on almost seemingly every single day, but yet it's continuing to grind higher. So it's climbing this sort of wall of worry perhaps, but it still does look good. Tough to chase it where it is, but challenge $60 today, faded a bit off of it. So GoPro still looks good. Don't see an entry in it, but I like it if you're involved. Tesla starting kind of similar to Netflix, where it's starting to kind of curl over a little bit. It's been riding the fast moving average just like Netflix, starting to catch up with it. Price is starting to kind of go sideways. Let's see if it'll roll over. Let's see if it just is going to base out, go sideways, and hold strong. Tesla, again, is a name I'd like to get involved in on the long side, so I welcome some consolidation there in Tesla. Now let's look at some other names. INSY, this one had a nice close today. above a pretty important level, about 6140 or so. If you look at a weekly chart, you can see here it's been hanging out sideways since about February of this year, finding resistance right around 6140. So we had a pretty nice close, highest close, I think, you know, going back right into the end of April, where we had this brief rally up here. So this one looks good. See if that one can continue. LOC, this was another good one today. Broke out of this kind of flag pattern. It was consolidating for a couple of weeks. LOC looks to be back in motion. You can kind of see you got this big cup or rounded bottom here that you could look at with this handle perhaps. So, you know, if it can get continuation above today, I think LOC looks pretty good. CRR is another one, maybe not quite ready yet. It tried to perk up earlier in the day, then it got faded just a little bit, but you can see a much longer term base that's trying to get put in here all the way to the end of last year. This is an oil services name, so this was beaten up pretty hard. Back above 45 looks pretty interesting. Look at a weekly chart, you can see. So you have this nice thrust up, 4 or 5 weeks of consolidation, and let's see if it's ready to continue again. CRR could be interesting. And then finally UTHR, this one again not ready yet. Tried to get going today. Basically above today's highs would be pretty interesting. You can see how many times it's getting faded there, so keep that one on watch. It's had a nice run. We had a trade in this earlier in the year, but UTHR looks pretty good. And then finally a couple of names on the short side. ICPT. This one had this big down day here, which has been controlling price action as it's been sort of grinding lower now. It's on support, but the close today certainly doesn't indicate very bullish respective behavior of support. So below 250, I think this one could get interesting on the short side. It's been beaten up, so you know, you got to be careful with it. But if that's your cup of tea, ICPT could be pretty interesting. And then WM, this one again, you can just see the strong impulse downside move that it had, and then kind of this this weak bear flag pattern into the fast moving averages, and you can see it starting to roll over again today. So this one could be interesting too on the short side. And then there's just a ton of REITs, a ton of that rate sensitive sectors, the XLU, IYR. There were a ton of names that all look you know, something similar where it's just rolling over. So a lot of those names look pretty beaten up, but that they could see more follow through to the downside. So that's all I have for today. Thanks for watching, and best of luck trading out there, and I will catch you next time.